Google defines imposter syndrome as a psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, and accomplishments, and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. According to a 2020 review, 9 to 82% of people experience imposter syndrome. Many people experience symptoms for a limited time, such as in the first few weeks of a new job. For some, the experience can be lifelong. 3 years ago, after I graduated from college, I really wanted to take my freelance business forward, as I was really inspired by this whole notion of creative entrepreneurship. So I set up this cool looking portfolio website with all the pro bono projects I had done for a few businesses and was even posting consistently on social media. Then one day I received this DM from a potential client who just so happens to find my work to be interesting and wanted to discuss some project ideas. Happy as a pup with two tails, I set up a meeting with the client and was even ready to give it my all. But 5 minutes later, I found myself scratching my head, biting my nails, and questioning everything I had ever done. Who was I kidding? There are a ton of freelancers out there and my work doesn't even come close to theirs. Besides, this is a very saturated industry, and what would a 22-year-old with free Wi-Fi could possibly do? As you can tell, I wasn't quite myself. And as most of us do, I went to the internet to find out what it actually was that I was going through. And what I was going through could be encapsulated in just 2 words: imposter syndrome. After being chokeslammed by Google, I started researching about what this imposter syndrome actually was. And I apparently wasn't alone, because there are a ton of people, especially creatives, who experience imposter syndrome on a regular basis. Imposter syndrome can be detrimental to the success of a person, but it can also be a sign of somebody who is just a perfectionist and just doesn't want to do away with some average kind of work. So long story short, I ditched the meeting and spent the entire day curled up in the blanket thinking to myself, will I always feel this way? Over the next few months, I started reading about the lizard brain and how it affects our everyday lives. This is not to say that I have all the answers, but I've uncovered something that might be of interest to you. So how do you overcome this imposter syndrome? Well, quite frankly, you don't. Because the only way to overcome imposter syndrome is to not think about it at all. Allow me to explain a concept called the spotlight effect. We spend our lives imagining there is an invisible spotlight above our heads, assuming that we are the main characters in this grand scheme of things. But that's a fatal assumption. As much as we hold our identity to the highest regard, the selves we identify ourselves as is a construct of the society and the way we go through life. This is not a lesson on psychotherapy, but I want you to know that the thoughts and feelings we experience are a result of our past trauma, current life situations, and the conditioning that we've received during our formative years. Sorry to have drawn a tangent here, but there's a connection. Motivation arises in the internal, which is influenced by our preconditioned beliefs, and it prompts us to take certain actions into the outside world. The outside world provides feedback as a result of our actions and thereby changes our internal experience. Going back to our topic, imposter syndrome, or the feeling of self-doubt, is simply the feedback we've received from the environment, along with several other interpretations we could have made. But we only end up accepting the narratives that make us feel bad. Negativity bias is a notion that even when things are going perfectly normal, we tend to ruminate on the things that are more negative than the things that are more positive. This pattern of thinking was hardwired in our prehistoric brain, which helped us to stay vigilant against the predators in the vast jungles of savanna. Turns out our ancestors realized that it wasn't always cool to live in a constant state of fear, and discovered something that would change the course of humanity forever. Before there was a self, there was a tribe. Our ancestors did not stand alone, they banded together to survive. When we realized that we needed each other to survive, we ended up changing the whole world. In his book Leaders Eat Last, author Simon Sinek talks about this inherent need for a circle of safety hardwired in our DNA. But why is the circle of safety so very crucial to our survival as a species? When we operate in a strong circle of safety, the sense of belonging, of shared values, and a deep sense of empathy dramatically enhances our trust, cooperation, and problem solving. When we no longer fear danger from each other, we are better equipped to confront external dangers that threaten our survival. No one is thinking you're an imposter. Everyone is busy thinking about themselves. This tweet from Ryan Holiday totally changed the way I was thinking about imposter syndrome. When we're talking about imposter syndrome, we're actually talking about being lost in our own thought. We get so caught up in this self-proclaimed narratives that we no longer interpret the reality as it is. I've realized that the only way to break this spell is to divert our attention from being self-absorbed to creating a circle of safety for the other person, be it a client or someone whom you're helping. Now you're no longer the patient, but the doctor. In fact, that's why you were there in the first place, remember? Not to be a guru, but to be a guide. We all have a few things where we are exceptionally good at. You've been doing something for so long that you don't even know what it feels like to not know how to do it. You just take it for granted. As Derek Sivers would say, obvious to you, amazing to others. If you can harness the skills and use them to improve somebody's life, you, my friend, are creating value, and there is no reason to feel insecure about it. This is not to say that I do not deal with these feelings of self-doubt and self-sabotage from time to time. And when I do, it is often because I am caught up in these stories that I'm telling myself. I think that I'm being rational, but really I'm just being self-absorbed. And more often than not, when I'm not focused on self-preservation and instead on compassion and empathy, I've realized that I do have something valuable to offer. So if you are new here, my name is Tubden and I talk about creative entrepreneurship, personal development and philosophy. If you are interested in these topics, please do subscribe because I know you'll like it here. For those of us dealing with the imposter syndrome that I just talked about, may you have the awareness to separate your vision from your ego. And I hope that this video made you understand something about yourself and helps you become a more confident and a creative human being. Seize the day, champion.